stage real fast? Is this all the people who will be talking?
Yeah, this is us.
Okay, great.
Yes. Are we gonna have any video or no?
Yeah, you can share your screen if you want. However you guys want to do it, that's definitely an option on here.
It's saying I'm not allowed to.
Oh, let me give you permission. Hang on.
And then Jordan probably will, maybe Tats will too. So
Okay, I'll give you
Yeah,
guys all that.
I have slides. So
I know some people want to lean into anonymity. That's cool. I don't have any concerns about that. So I don't know kind of what the standard is for, cameras on or off.
Oh yeah, it's totally up to you guys, whatever you're comfortable doing. I'm trying to figure out the setting. Jerome, how can they share their screen? What's the setting I have to change? You know? Let's see here. Oh, I see what I can do. Verify member. AJ, if you want to try sharing your screen now, tell me what it says. Oh, thanks, Jay. I think I
okay.
might have.
See. I don't know if I need to like refresh the app or anything, but
I don't think you
No,
should
yeah,
have to
same
do.
thing for me. It says you can't stream into this channel.
yeah.
Okay, so and you're going. Okay, let me see if when I share my screen, what happens? Share my screen. See, when I click on the bottom little icon to share screen, it just immediately opens up a window to ask me which like tab I want to share. So it works for me. I just need to. Hey Amir, hey Amir, you know what setting I need to change so they can share their screen during their presentation? It's not currently letting them. Maybe I just need to give you guys higher roles or something. Let me see here. Here roles. Oh yeah, maybe that's. I just need to give you guys a role. Try Let's see here. I'm gonna give you guys ambassador president roles just for a minute, just to see if that fixes it. Okay. So just
Yeah, we'll be careful on our end. So
okay, great. Roles. Okay, so let's do ambassador president. I gave that to you, Jordan. See if it works for you now with your new role, and then I'll give it to you, AJ, if it works. Let's see. No.
Yeah, it looks like I can share kind of a screen, which is great.
Okay,
And
great.
perfect.
looks like video works as well too.
Okay, so sorry, I just pinged you. AJ, I'm gonna update your role to that as well. Just remind me when it's over to take it away.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Does Tats need to get this
Yeah.
role? Do you need that as well? Okay, one sec.
yeah, I have some slides.
Great. Okay. Roles and ambassador president. Okay, you guys should all be good to go now. Okay, 5 minutes till show time. Be right back, you guys. I'm just gonna send this invite out a few more times in some of the ambassador channels, and then I think we'll be ready to start.
All right, sounds good.
Hey guys, I started the event so we can just let people kind of trickle in for the next couple minutes.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Awesome.
Welcome everyone. Hey Akash. Hey Chris. All right, guys. Let's get started. Today we have Etherfuse here to talk to us. They're going to be talking about stable bonds and why they chose to build on Stellar. We have AJ Taylor, who's the CTO, Jordan Gates, who's one of their lead developers, and Tats, who heads the marketing team. I'm going to turn it over to them. And definitely at the end, if you guys have questions or anything, we can bring people up on stage and let you guys talk. So without further ado, take it away, AJ.
All right, I'm fine sharing my screen if that works for everyone. Let me see if I do. All right, I think you guys can see my screen. So yeah, like you said, co-founder of Etherfuse, and we created a product called stable bonds. And so these are essentially yield bearing. You could think of them as yield bearing stable coins, but in reality, they're an RWA of the tokenized bond flavor. So we have currently 5 products right now. We have a CETES Mexican bond, Brazilian Tesoro, US Treasury, Euro bond, and UK gilts. And so as you can see, we currently have 3 that are on Stellar, and we're looking to push the rest on there. And so what these are, an Etherfuse CETES is backed by actual Mexican CETES bonds. And so what does that mean? For each token that we have issued, we have reserves within our brokerages that we use. And as you can see here, we have bonds purchased at BBVA, Ocniver and Cuspit. So these are some of the larger brokerages in Mexico, just as an example. And you can kind of dig into here and see, where are these held, any tax information, what's custodied here. And, here as well, we also have attestations. So at a regular cadence, we have a third party dig in and say, hey, Etherfuse says that they have X amount of bonds. Do they actually, hold these? Right. And so you can take a look in here and see that we do indeed. We have someone go through all the accounts and then validate for this. So the most recent one was March 28th, as you can see. So that's a little bit about, the example of, stable bonds. And yeah, I could talk a little bit more about it, but I'll just that's just a high level. And then Jordan, if you want to highlight anything as well, you can.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the attestation part is really critical in that RWA space because, I mean, even recently there have been different players in that space who've kind of pretended to do RWAs or maybe are, but it can be tricky if if the organization's like, say, trust me, I'm good for it. By reaching out to some of these other organizations to get them to do attestations on a really regular cadence, we worked pretty hard to make sure all that data was like super easy for third parties to view and aggregate and have as much of it on chain as possible. That way, trust is really key in that space. I mean, nobody wants to put their money where it might just float away. So I think we posted the link in the chat. I can do that again, but you can definitely kind of cruise through there. And there's a bunch of this information, all the different attestations we've done to make that public. And again, trying to keep things on chain as much as possible.
Yep. So yeah, I won't dig into this too much, but just, we have information on asset security if you're the type that likes to dig into this, and compliance, auditing, proof of reserves, terms and conditions. We try to dig in as much as possible on the regulatory side. But yeah, so that's what stable bonds are.
All right, cool. So basically, to everybody here, the reason AJ and Dave built Etherfuse was to make bonds accessible, RWAs accessible like worldwide. Because you usually, nowadays, if you want to open like an account and start buying like treasury bonds, you have to have a bank account in the country. You have to, be admitted into purchase, and depending on the country, you can start with like $100, or other countries ask you for huge amounts like $5,000. What Etherfuse is doing here today is, you know, uh, enabling people worldwide to access the assets for as low as the um, local currency is. So, if, for example, if you're purchasing tesouros from Brazil, uh, you buy it like in the representative price of real. If it's in Mexico, I've said this, you do it like in the price of the peso, and if it's in American dollar for U.S. Treasuries, well, it's the U.S. So I think that is one of the key uh, things that Etherfuse does. It's like they care about enabling access to these assets worldwide, not to make it just like, oh, it's just for like the ultra rich or like for wealthy. This is for everybody. So if you want to, like access like APY in your wallets, I think that's like, it's a cool way to go. And
Yeah, and just to add to that, like if you wanted access to bonds, through Mexico, it's typically this lengthy process. You have to go through this long multi-month to get an account and be able to purchase one. And here you could go through the KYC process and within minutes, essentially be able to purchase tokenized bonds. So we do that. Another one of our, like I guess you'd say like mission statements or whatever. Those are kind of, but is to bring FX on chain. So we don't want, for on and off ramps, for example, or payments, you have to go through all these intermediaries to send money. And we want to bring that on chain. And so the trade itself is going to happen within DeFi or secondary markets on chain. So we're currently working on this product to be able to on and off ramp. So you could take MXN and you could on ramp into CETES, and then you can make a trade into USDC. And what that allows us to do is have one of the cheapest routes possible for on ramping MXN to, potentially USDC, USDT, or you could go into, Brazilian Tesouro. And so if we were to extend that thought, you could imagine a scenario where we have integrated with Mexico for on ramps with the Mexican SPAY payment rails. And we've also integrated with Brazilian RTP payment rails of PIX. And so you could send money from a Brazilian bank account to a Mexican bank account within seconds. And where does that trade happen? Where does that FX happen? I don't want that to happen on, a centralized exchange. I want those trades to happen at a DeFi level on secondary markets. I want that to happen on a DEX, for example. And so what we're trying to do is kind of bring that FX on chain, not just, submit transactions on chain. We want FX to happen on chain as well. I think that's like a really powerful statement. So with that, you could do all sorts of things. stable bonds in particular are functionally equivalent to, a stable coin as far as what you can do with it. The main difference is you're getting yield. And so there's all these, efficiencies you can have with that. So we're really excited to be able to do that. One other thing is like, as we start to bring FX on chain, we want the ability for people to take out loans, right? So you can imagine someone with, a bank account in one of these countries. And if they want to take out a loan, we could use someone like, Blend, for example, if that were possible, or, bring some of those into it. And so kind of bringing the users on chain where it should be is kind of what we're wanting to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the cool things I think that we almost take for granted with these stable bonds is this really cool fusion of an asset pegged to a currency value. So like a sectes, what we have here is a yield that pegged to like a Mexican peso, right? And so if you buy 10 pesos worth of sectes on a token or whatever, that yield's going to increase, right? And so that the value of that token will increase over time. You're not going to get that through like emissions drops or whatever. It's just what we will exchange that token for, and the value will increase based on like what you can see on our site, but also some other publicly available things on certain chains. We use kind of these coefficients or extensions, but in a sense, you've got a predictable rate of return. And as a result, if you buy 10 pesos worth and the yield is 10 APY, it's just going to keep going up. Now, if you measure your progress in dollars, there's no guarantee, of course, that you're going to always have more US dollars. But if you care about pesos in your Mexico, or if you care about Brazilian reals, then you do have that confidence, which is really cool. And so there's a lot of stable coins out there that peg at 1-for-1, and then behind the scenes, a company may invest those in bonds or whatever, but hold on to the yield themselves. By releasing these tokens out there into the wild that have ever increasing yields, it provides people not only with the benefit of a stable coin, but also the yield of that on top of that, which is why we call these stable bonds. And then it allows for the developers kind of out there to build stable coins on top of this. And so you can imagine if you were to buy 100 pesos and worth of bonds, and then those bonds continue to go up in value, if you've just issued on top of that 100 pesos worth of stable coins, you then are the one holding on to that yield. And so we have partners that we're working with that are doing that are actually saying, you know what, there's some complexity here. I had 10 pesos. Next year I'll have 11 or 12 or whatever the yield is. And that's kind of a cognitive issue for some of my users. I'm just going to always say this is worth 10, and they pocket a lot of that yield. And so there's some real value there for it as an infrastructure play, because all of that value is out there on chain, as opposed to it just being locked up in a server somewhere.
One of the things I'll mention too, as far as like why we built on Stellar, right, is it's fast, it's cheap, but also one of the things we're looking to do is kind of be potentially an anchor on Stellar. And so, as probably everyone here knows, it's this interface to be able to plug into, and those that are plugged in can, it's a lot less of a dev time for people to plug into you as an anchor for on and off ramping. And so, given that, we're one of the cheapest rails to the Mexican peso, both on and off chain, you can imagine, plugging into Stellar, and then they just make that so much easier. It's like all of a sudden there's this opportunity where we get to show, we're the cheapest MXN rails, and we get to compete with that. And so that's one of the things we're looking into, really excited about. Stellar's built a lot of cool things. Also, just the payouts in general, being able to pay out quite a bit of people at the same time is extremely useful as we dig deeper and deeper. And so the stable bonds are like the building blocks of this. And there's just so much more you can do, and the ways companies can build on top of it. And we're just digging into it. And Stellar makes that easier for us. So been grateful to work with them so far.
Yeah, that yield, that kind of predictable government-based yield makes a lot of mechanisms easier or cost-effective, right? So we're not having to charge outrageous fees for someone to on-ramp or off-ramp money. And like you said, AJ, we're not charging FX fees, like other people might have to, because we've got yields that are backing that up. And so the yield of those assets are able to offset a lot of those fees that would otherwise have to occur. So it's a lot of win in the system where it's not a net drain, it's a net positive to the system because the government's funding that net positive in the end.
And I know there's questions. I could answer some of these, or we could wait till the end, whatever, but I'm just not sure of the schedule. So just let me know what makes sense.
So, like, on your developer's perspective, like, how is it compared to build like on Stellar compared to other chains?
Yeah, I would say just coming from, other chains, I would say the documentation's definitely much better. Some other chains refer to as chewing on glass when trying to work with them, and hasn't been the case with Stellar. So I would say the barrier to entry is a lot lower, just from personal experience. So that's been really good. Um, and just the Stellar, foundation community has been really helpful. Anytime we have questions, kind of pointing us to the right people, and getting help and just getting thoughts on, how to build certain things. So those two have been extremely helpful for me.
I liked when we started off on chains other than Stellar, and then when we came to Stellar, I think I was able to get a lot of this work done for our site to kind of start directly interfacing with Stellar on chain within about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And there were other chains that took much longer, and over the course of months. And so being able to jump in and be effective within a week and a half, 2 weeks is a really, really powerful ecosystem. I think part of it is our interests are aligned with kind of that Stellar methodology and interest of making sure that like RWAs have a real stable, solid place like in the ecosystem. And so that's been really cool to work with.
And yeah, like seems like protocols are trying to build actual, real things here on Stellar. I'm not personally a fan of meme coins. That might be I know some people are, but I do like the actually solve real world problems. So feel like that's definitely the culture here.
Well, I think that's really cool to get like the developer perspective, right? Not only like the marketing guy. Um,
That's
I think that like part of like the cool journey here is that every like now and then we're adding bonds. Like we're looking for like those like uh good, I don't know how to say it, like that have like the good grades, good graded bonds. I know like triple B, double B bonds, triple A bonds. Like bonds that come from countries with good economies, big, like from governments that actually care about their economy and they take care about it. So we've chosen like Mexico, Brazil, U.S. bonds. We have like the set of European bonds, and I'm missing one. Oh, and the UK gilts. So if there's like maybe a roadmap in the future, like what bonds would you guys be interested in like adding?
Um, I think LATAM, a lot of countries that have some remittance flow, where we think we're just have a cheaper and superior solution to that. I think those are kind of the ones we're digging into, and then also, balancing the value of their bonds, right? What's the yield and rating of them? So there's a handful of countries there that we're looking to go into. We'll be sure and announce those as it gets closer, but we're looking at that criteria as when we're kind of addressing it.
That's really cool.
I'm happy to answer some of these questions too. Someone said, "Do you hedge 1-to-1 on the fly?" We do, as long as we have excess collateral. So if you were to go on there and make a purchase and there's excess collateral, then we do go ahead and do that. So we have plenty of that. And anytime you do have the option, say you wanted to make like a very large order, say it was like $10 million and there wasn't enough to cover it, it would be converted to a purchase order. And then once the issuance of the bonds started, where we make the purchase, you would get your tokens minted essentially. So yes, we do require KYC when you go through us directly on Etherfuse. So and then yeah, who holds the real world bonds? We have those custody. So depending on the country, we have specific brokerages where those are held. And yeah, we pride ourselves in trying to be as transparent as possible. Some stablecoin issuers aren't, and we try to be just open about it, right? Because we've put a ton of work into that and trying to do the right thing there.
No, for sure. I mean, I remember AJ. We kind of wrestled with making sure these attestations were really easy and straightforward for people to read, and I think we've spent weeks or if not a month or two on getting all that finessed just right. There was a lot of investment in time in making sure that we're transparent.
Yes.
Any other questions out there?
Or even Tats if you had others.
Yeah, I think that there's another one. Like, if it's not through the Etherfuse app, where else can people get their bonds from?
Yeah, I think there's secondary markets that exist, seller specifically, on dexes. And you could go through those avenues as well. So yeah, there's a few within DeFi that are available.
Jesus, there's
Yeah,
a lot of math now.
yeah. I mean, as you can imagine, purchasing days, if the price were to, drop or increase, you'd be able to purchase and kind of fill that in. So.
Yeah, right now, purchasing on Stellar, we are working with large liquidity kind of providers. If someone was interested in becoming a liquidity provider for that, I think we'd be interested to talk to you later on and make sure we get all of our KYC, KYB stuff finalized because we want to make sure we're above board. But there are great opportunities for that. If people are asking about like market order books, if things get wiped out or if prices start to fluctuate. Yeah, I mean, there are arbitrage opportunities there for sure. And like AJ, what you were talking about before, if we start to see you can buy US bonds and Mexican bonds and Brazilian bonds, and there are FX fluctuations because the dollar is weakening or strengthening, you might be able to take advantage of that on chain. Maybe faster than you could through like a traditional finance situation. Potentially maybe beating those market makers or whatever it is to the punch. And so there's arbitration opportunities there for sure.
Yeah, Africa is definitely something we're looking into. I think we have a good value prop there. We kind of, have this framework for how we kind of go into a country. And now that we know, have done it, know how it works, I think the goal here is to expand. And so that's what we're looking at. Africa is definitely on the table, though.
So we don't currently have Stellar testnet support. When we were kind of digging into that a little bit, it was a little bit trickier than we were able to bite off. And so right now we don't have a strong testnet presence. So we don't have a site. I think we do have a testnet site or DevNet developer friendly site, but right now it's targeting Stellar production. But I think we are looking at, it's on the roadmap to make sure that we have that, especially as we're working towards fully supporting the Anchor protocols. AJ, can
That's
you
in the
speak to
works.
that?
Yeah, ETA and Anchor. I'm currently digging in to see, what's the lift there. And so going to try and bug as many people at Stellar as possible with questions I potentially have and get it done at ASAP. Because it's like I've heard about it offhand, and then as I dug into it, I realized what such a big deal it was, and how it solves such a big problem for us. So I'm extremely motivated to get that done. So the ETA is as soon as possible, and even today, like I'm looking into it, going to try setting some, stuff up on our end, some code and deploy it out. But yeah, ASAP is the answer. Very excited about that. Yeah, so we if you go into the UK gilts, bond details, you can see, our partnership that we have and how we purchase UK bonds. And so doesn't necessarily need to be a stable coin associated with our bonds. I would say our bonds are the native asset that stable coins can, collateralize themselves with. But yeah, if you
So-
want some UK gilts yield, you could get that.
Right now, you buy them with whatever asset, but we have them pegged to a currency exchange rate with the dollar, and so that way we can kind of price them that way. But then that does mean that the ecosystem, it's ripe for an opportunity to build a stable coin on top of those bonds. And so if you wanted to, with the right work, you can get the accurate current price of a bond in gilts, and then reverse engineer that a little bit, and be the first issuer of like a British pound stablecoin on Stellar.
Yeah. Do we have to KYC? Yes, through Etherfuse. You do have to KYC. It takes a couple of minutes. So. Right now we use Plaid as our provider. So it's pretty quick. Yeah, I mean, RWAs in essence, we're tied to the real world asset. So, we're a stable bond issuer or an RWA issuer. So I think you're going to have some centralization there.
Yeah, and like people are pointing out, I think right now, before we get all of our anchor protocol stuff locked down, the best way that we're doing this right now is working with liquidity providers who are providing that on chain, and then we're pointing right now to the dexes, like we're consuming those dexes on our site for Stellar, and then as we have the ability to natively mint these assets, we'll be able to do that a little bit more easily.
One thing I want to highlight too is, a lot of these, RWAs, there's a lot of like, permissioned aspects. There's even, L2s and L1s that are built on the premise of like, making things more permissioned. We have the regulatory authority for, permissionless, transfers and all that. So there's some flexibility there with what is possible, which we're pretty proud of. So yeah, just highlighting that. One of them being secondary markets, the big one. So. No, I am personally not a Dodgers fan. I'm a Diamondbacks fan, to be honest. So I grew up in the days of Randy Johnson. So
I was there for the Nationals World Series run, and that was my team. And then recently, they've decided they don't really want to compete on a national level.
yeah, I mean, we all have our problems. Dave being a Dodgers fan is like a big one. Luckily, we can look past that. We all have our weaknesses, right? So, but yeah, huge Diamondbacks fans and Phoenix Suns fans as well. So. Yeah, we started on Solana. That's I was familiar with Rust and was so that was just one we started with. And as we dug in, we saw, a lot of use cases for other chains, Stellar being one of them. And it's like this thread of the more I pull it, the more I see, ways we could build on top of it in optimal ways. So.
And our momentum is building towards Stellar, right? Like out of a lot of the growth kind of that we've been seeing over the last couple of months, it's been all kind of focused on that Stellar area, and so it's definitely the key platform of interest, I think, for us kind of going forward. How do we maximize and maintain that momentum?
Yeah. I'll just say this about the comment on how is Rest on Solana versus Stellar. Solana, there's they have this concept of chewing glass, and I don't think that's something they I think it's that for a reason, right? So it's definitely been a lot easier using Stellar. As far as like the regulation side, sorry, Sir Willem, that would be a Dave question. I don't know if I would be able to answer that in a very elegant way. So happy to pass that on and DM you. So. Yeah, I see some funny comments about other chains. So it's funny. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions for us? So about the fees, I don't understand the part more. I don't understand the part of more than 0.25% when your yield is between 4, 5, 10%. Can you explain, please? Yeah, we have a sliding scale with our fees on top of our yield. So we have a page that I can link here. Hold on one sec.
It's down at the bottom of stable bonds over here. I'll just drop a link right there.
Yeah, drop it in there. But yeah, it's a sliding scale. So it's based off the yield of the bond. We go anywhere from 25 bips to 150 bips, depending on the yield of the bond. The implication there is, some of the bonds with the higher yield potentially, more volatile and everything.
But that stuff, those yields are ones that the user won't ever see directly coming out of their pocket. What happens is that we work with our brokers actually on like a weekly basis, and we say, okay, what are the yields coming up for this next week? And then they tell us, okay, we can get 5% or we can get 10% or whatever it is. And then what we do is we kind of say, okay, based on our graph, like what's the fee that we take? We take that, and then when we publicize the rate to the user, that's already the net fee, rate with our fee taken out. And so it's not like we're going to come back and claw back an extra 0.25% off of what you're seeing. That rate is that continuously compounding interest rate that we are using for that coefficient. So does that answer that question? Like the rate that we're advertising is the rate that's actually going to hit that for this coming week. And then next week it might change. There's we don't control those rates. It's what the brokers can provide us, but we're only shaving off 0.25%.
Yeah. And so we're buying short-term treasuries. These update weekly, and the rates do as well. So that means our associated fee also potentially could update depending on the rate, since it is tied to that. So yeah. Yeah, happy to give any input or help there, depending on what everyone wants. So
I think that's a good question. Why would you choose Etherfuse instead of Paxos or other guys? We're actually work with Paxos. Like if you look and see our like where we're holding some of our funds, like we are using Paxos as the source of some of our yield. We've got that diversified across a couple different people. I think one of the things that's valuable is that as our tokens kind of increase in value, those are all completely on chain. And so you can build on that. You can leverage those tokens within smart contracts. We're not doing, I know with some Paxos at certain tier levels or whatever, you have either liquid coins or you don't. And so we think there is a unique value proposition there. Also, I would say that um, our where we're most interested in or excited about is these emerging markets that are currently being underserved. And so, yeah, there are a lot of people out there willing to kind of get in and provide yield on U.S. denominated assets. And I think there's a lot of underserved countries out there that we can target at the same time um, with a class of assets that makes it so that you can go cross border and you're not just locked into the dollar.
Yeah, we see a lot of inefficiencies with cross-border payments, and we're solving that using, stable bonds as the asset. So that's kind of where we're leaning in. How often do you do you do the settlement on your side with the brokers? Um, yeah, for CETES, for example, we have weekly bonds and we roll them into the next. And so those go from making the purchase of the asset to maturing and then rolling it into the next, and we update the rates and continue to get the yield. So if you just want to buy the token, and you just held it, you're getting short-term treasuries and it's just continuing to increase in, the underlying currency of that bond. And if you just hold it, that will continue to go up. So we hide all that complexity and just make it so if you just wanted to swap for the token, just hold it and you're exposed to that. We're excited about the possibility of, there's a lot of potential things going on in the world tied to the economy and, making it possible to be able to potentially speculate, on some of these currencies, whether you wanted to short or long it, and making that accessible to people. So we're really excited about that. You can imagine if you wanted to, long the CETES you could, or if you wanted to, short a peso, for example, that would be possible and kind of leave it up to the market to decide. So really excited about that.
AJ, you want to take that question about why you picked the name Etherfuse? I feel like I've asked you that like 3 or 4 times at different, even when I started up.
Yeah, the name Etherfuse, it's really so. Dave and I were co-founders and also brothers, and so this was a name from a really long time ago, and we just used it. We went with it. So nothing deep behind the name, unfortunately, other than we thought, hey, this would be great. So, yeah, we went with it, and yeah, it's been we get some questions about it for sure. So. New markets or stable bonds you want to release? Sorry for all my questions, but I have been doing my research about you. I'm really curious. Right now we're sticking to this 5 and then expanding it and growing it out. So, as we grow, we will be, adding more. But right now we're saying, given these 5, what can we do? Whether it's, on and off ramp being very cheap or being collateral for stable coins. How do we make that so it's an extremely good UX and make it available? So we're kind of focusing on those problems right now.
Yeah, and I think we want to solidify our base in each one of these countries or each one of these currencies, right? Like you could try to swarm and hit 100 different bonds and 100 different, tokens, but there is some cost associated with each one, right? Like being a smaller, more nimble team means that if we've got to place an order with a broker for 100 different assets every week, that's a lot of like mental space that takes up right now. We have most of it automated, but it still means there's a human on the other end somewhere that you're saying, no, I really do want to buy all these assets this week. And so we're kind of proving out the concept right now.
Yeah, so we're building these products out, and then as we start to add more assets, making a payment from X bank account to Y will now be X to Z, and then I guess A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever you want to say. So makes the network that much more powerful, and adds a lot more possibility. So
there was a question about risk out there that I thought was interesting. If we buy so it happens to be Thursdays right now. It's nothing magical, right? It's just kind of what it is. Right now, we have these periods called issuances where Thursdays to Thursdays, we kind of buy things. So right now we have excess funds in some of our bonds, and so we purchase additional bonds more than we need. I think now it's around $1 million or $2 million more than we need. And so that way people can take those bonds off our hands if they want to mint immediately. So there is some risk in terms of currency exposure, depending on if you're measuring that risk against dollars, because all of those assets are tied up in alternate currencies to whatever those assets are. But I don't think we really consider that risk because those funds are still earning yield, and so they're diversified into different countries. And then people have the option to immediately sell back and kind of forfeit some of the interest that they would have earned, or they can wait till the end of that issuance and get like that full face value. And so some of those mechanisms are more evident, I guess, on other chains. But like right now, especially with the DeFi markets, since those are all locked in at the current trading value of the bond, you don't really have to wait. You can just kind of go and swap with someone else who's been holding those bonds. So we've worked really hard to make sure we're not, caught in the wind without assets or whatever at all times. We make sure we either have the total value of all of our. Actually, yeah, right now we're making sure that for every token someone has, we at least have 1-to-1 matching with the number of bonds we're holding.
Yeah,
Oftentimes it's like a 120% versus 100%. But we make sure that we're never exposed.
and we try to balance like hide as much complexity as possible to the user, but also give as much flexibility to the user for holding the native asset. So if this is a weekly bond and you wanted to divest, you could divest it and then, wait till the end of the issuance and be able to redeem that underlying asset. So what kind of market split are you seeing as yield drivers between remittances and cross-border trade?
I don't really think that the yield drivers are necessarily linked. The yield is actually set by the central government. And so we don't really determine based on volume what the yield is. Like it's not some sort of super complex based on assets or yield or what. It's just simply what is the central government giving us for yield, and we'll pass that on to users. And so that's what drives the yield. But then in terms of interest, I think we have had a lot of interest from partners saying, you know what, we really want to use this product, and we see there's great potential here for cross-border payments and remittances potentially. It's expensive right now, more expensive than it should be for moving money from one fiat currency to another. And leveraging DeFi, we really think we can get that down to sub percentages. And that's huge, right? Like you're not having to pay $5 at a counter to move your money to a different country.
Yeah, I mean, what you potentially could see is anywhere from like 80 bips to 150 for on and off ramping to the average remittance of being I think they say like 6.5 I guess percent. We're trying to get it almost zero, single digit bips as kind of what we're looking towards. So and it's we're building it out right now, and it's we've been able to prove it out. So very happy about that. The other question was, why not create an index bond fund instead of holding them all separately, like MSCI World, but for bonds? Great question. We thought about that, and there's definitely people who are interested in doing that themselves within their own protocols, using stable bonds as the asset. So right now, we're just trying to keep it as like native as possible and closely to the RWA. But yeah, you can't imagine a scenario where we kind of have an index fund based on certain emerging markets, or if you want exposure, so something we're looking at, but right now we're just focusing on the building blocks and going from there. So if there's enough interest, yeah, it's something we could do though.
And I think people are empowered as long as like you check your local regulations or whatever where you're incorporated. People can be empowered to build on the things that we've put out there. And so they can build up those mixtures themselves, right? we're giving people the raw ingredients with these bonds and tokens, and then kind of seeing what the world wants to build on top of them as an infrastructure. So if you want to build the next USDC and just have that and that's it, that's great. You could do that using stable bonds. If you want to do the same thing in Mexico or Brazil, you can do that. We've got partners that we're working with that, based on kind of the regulatory environment, they can build a stable coin on top of our assets. And they're able to do that and profit from that. So I guess I would encourage any developers out there, look into that. We even had a project that we worked with some people. We put a bounty out there for something called stable.fun, where we wanted to see if people could make their own kind of meme stable coins, which is kind of a weird mix up, but kind of self-mixed stable coins. And if you could, whatever reason, get one to go viral, that means the person who's creating that gets to keep a lot of that yield for themselves. I don't know. There's interesting opportunities there.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm getting some we are to stable bonds, what Circle is to stable coins vibe. Main difference being, we want to share the yield with you guys, but I do understand the phrasing there. So Do Kwon did just that. Never good when you hear that name, so just kidding. Cool. How is it taxation of the yield because the bonds are on the blockchain? Jordan, you can answer that. I know you dug into some.
So we are not tax professionals, right? So I think you would handle yours yourself. But what we would suggest is kind of look at taxable events, right? Frequently with stable coins, that means for like U.S. jurisdictions, which we don't do parties with people in the U.S., of course, so that wouldn't be applicable to them. But using that as a case study, when you get out of a position, that's when you are recognizing the value that you've earned. And so
Yeah.
because we're not doing airdrops, we're not people would not be incurring a taxable event, kind of as we've kind of done the thought exercises for. But
Yeah.
again, we're not tax consultants. For us individually, what we do is we aggregate all of the bonds that we are holding and responsible for, and then subtract out any that customers are responsible, have it with their token allocation. And then we calculate on a weekly basis what our yield was, and therefore what our taxable earnings are for our company. And there's some stuff with Mexico and the way where we do all that stuff to kind of add some seasoning into that accounting mix. But generally speaking, you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about emissions coming in and causing taxable events, again, as you may define them.
Yeah. None of not financial advice or anything. We don't withhold the taxes on our end. So sometimes when you purchase the bonds, they'll withhold it from you upon purchase and redeeming. We don't withhold that.
Yeah, and we do leverage our KYC, so that way, if you're a Mexican citizen, the Mexican government is interested in, okay, who are the Mexican citizens buying these bonds? And that's one of the reasons why we have to do KYC, honestly. And so it's not some kind of fly-by-night operation. We are conforming to all the regulations, and we put it up there pretty clearly on our site, all the different legal requirements we have. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of our selling points, that we're not going to, no, the Eye of Sauron is not going to get pointed at Etherfuse and go, wait, what are you guys doing? We AJ and Dave went down to Mexico to talk to the government there pretty extensively before getting everything set up to make sure we could do everything we wanted to.
Yeah. The unfortunate reality of being like within RWAs is you're kind of two companies. You're a crypto company, and then you're a traditional, TradFi payments company as well. So you're building up both solutions to be regulatory compliant. So yeah, if you just look at the site, you'll see, here's stable bonds, but as you start poking around, you see all the nuance that we've added there, to be compliant in different ways. So yeah, exactly. So we worked with the CNBV within Mexico. We use their regulatory framework to be able to do this. So definitely required more than what was said there. So. Yeah, I mean, when we initially talked to people, there was a lot of people we talked to that said it wasn't, possible. It was a very hard market to get into to get the regulatory clarity, and we were able to get it. We worked with a great legal team that allows us to do this. So we use that framework to be able to open up into other countries. Um, Now, of course, as you get into like payments and there are payment rails, there's other things you have to do, but yeah, as you can see, we have 5 different assets for 5 different countries using Mexico's framework. Cool. I think that's I don't know if there's any other questions. Happy to answer them in the next, minute or so. If there are, we could keep going but yeah, if there isn't, we're happy to. Looking into Colombia, it's definitely a lot happening there. So but yeah, I appreciate all these have been great questions. So as we've built on Stellar, we've been impressed with what's here, and we just want to lean in more. Like I said, one of the things we're digging into is using Anchor. I think that's a huge thing Etherfuse wants to leverage. We want to bring FX on chain. We want the trades to happen on Stellar within the appropriate protocols. So that's what we're driving. And we see this as a huge advantage. And so,
Yeah, I really like the fact with all the different set protocols out there, Stellar's done the homework ahead of time and they've laid this groundwork so that way people can come in and build real world solutions. And so it's been really fun to be able to work in this space for sure, and kind of work where it feels like this is the native. I don't know, like this is what Stellar was designed to do, and so we're not pushing, against forces or whatever, or against kind of meme traits or whatever. Like this is what Stellar wants to do, and we're doing it. And so it's fun to be in this ecosystem. We're excited.
yeah. And then as far as like what's coming, like I said, we are working on and off ramps. So would love to share that with you all as that starts to be released. So we haven't really announced any of that, but just kind of cueing you all in. We have some working. We have it working right now, and we're going to be expanding that. So very happy with it. How to do DeFi with stable bonds? Yes. Blend V2. Someone said it. I don't know what I'm allowed to say and not allowed to say, but yeah. So very excited about that happening. So that's gonna be very cool. So yeah, lending and using them as collateral. I think that's a major use case, and especially as we start to see remittance volume, coming in, there's some interesting things you can do there. So
100%. Yeah, I mean it's what TradFi is built on, right? Like bond yield and that being like the basis for a lot of growth. Like we're just bringing it on chain and making sure that as many countries can benefit from that as possible, targeting these underserved communities. So yeah, we're excited.
we yeah, we've talked to institutions. I'm not going to say who we have, but I think there's a lot of institutions looking into what's out there, right? And so there's definitely been talks and banks and all that, and so I think people are starting to realize, like, if I don't adapt, I'm going to be left behind. So great question. Yeah, I'll link my social. And Jordan, you can do the same.
Yeah, I'm not exactly the most active on social. I am a great lurker.
Right. Sharing the Etherfuse account as well.
Yeah, so follow us on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Feel free to reach out. Very excited with what we have coming up here on Stellar. we'll be having more announcements as things start to roll out. But us at Etherfuse, we're trying to invest as much as possible to make things happen on Stellar because we see it as a huge advantage. So very excited.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
See you,
Appreciate it.
everybody.